All right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of We As Start Talking. I am Gareth, one of your hosts, and I'm joined with Carl as well. He's co-hosting with me today. Not co-hosting me, he's co-hosting with me, should I say. And we are pumped for this episode. So I want to welcome Glenn Marsden to the show today. Glenn, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Thank you. And first and foremost, you do incredible work. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. So
nobody ever starts with that.
You know what? I always like to say, because you should lead with gratitude. You guys have taken time to find out about my story and about me, and I appreciate it. I look into what other people are doing, and you're leading by storytelling and getting people to share their stories. So I think it's amazing, guys.
Oh, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
And there's our soundbite for this episode.
I know. It's gonna marketing 101 right there.
Yep.
So we're pleased to obviously welcome you to the show. We're going to dig into the amazing work that you're doing, Glenn. Give you a little bit of a kind of an intro, and I actually wanted to share your kind of mission statement, and because I think it's so powerful, and I think people need to hear it. So. Glenn's a photographer. He's also got a background like myself with fitness and health as well, which is something that kind of how we indirectly connected, I guess. But you also more recently have founded the Imperfectly Perfect Campaign, and alongside your the Game Changer podcast as well. So that's what we're really, really keen to kind of dig into today. And I love this. I found this when doing a little bit of research, and basically with the Imperfectly Perfect Campaign, we're going to hear about the genesis today, and we're going to obviously dig into that conversation. But I just love this quote from the website. It's a global movement leading the way in changing the face of mental health and the culture around it. I just find that to be so powerful, and I'm really excited to kind of hear the story. So I think the best place is for, I guess, to hear the genesis story from you, Glenn.
Yeah, well, it really started, like you were saying there, that we've got a very similar background in health and fitness. And if I take it right back to the start, 6-7 years ago when I turned 30, and I thought it was time for me to, obviously I'd got a child and I'd got the career and I thought everything was fine, living on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. All of a sudden I started comparing myself to everybody, like these body beautifuls, I always say. And it really went to a demise of me having a relationship with the mirror. It started 2-3 minutes checking myself out, perceived flaws, comparing myself, to around 3 to 4 hours. And I just couldn't understand where it was going, how it came. I was the first person to go on the beach, top off. And I was asking friends, like, as we know in the health and fitness sector, when people look like they do sometimes, I'm not as naive as to think that you're not taking anything. However, you keep telling me that you're not, and you're a good friend of mine. So it's playing with my head. And it really got to a bad place for me. And my demise with it that got worse, we actually couldn't find childcare in Sydney. So we moved to Thailand, where my wife was originally born. So we moved back there. It was a choice of moving to the UK or Thailand. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to the climate. But I suppose change that cultural environment and then having more time with the mirror, it got to a really bad place until one day I broke down in front of my wife because she noticed it, and she was like, it's splitting our marriage up because you're disappearing, you're going to the mirror, you're like, what's happening? So I went to see somebody and sorted through it. And one of the best pieces of advice I got, I actually got put with, not when I was in Thailand, but when I came back, with a psychologist that actually put me in touch with a personal trainer who had gone through the same thing and had worked through cognitive behavioral therapy and all this mindset. So I started picking up intuitively on other people that was dealing with it. 2 years ago, turned social media back on because it was an attributor, found out that an old friend from the UK had passed away, looked into it because I was seeing highlight reels at Korea, and I looked a little bit in and I was like, well, there's no lead up. Like, was he ill? And it turned out that he'd taken his life. And for me, that knocked me about because I was like, on one side, the highlight reels, nobody would have seen it come in. I asked people, and a video that his partner or his wife, bear in mind, I've not been in the UK for like 16 years. So you lose contact, but you obviously see friends from socials. It knocked me for six because I saw one of those montage videos of their life and him with his little boy. And for me as a parent and seeing my kid crying or screaming where their mum's not there, I'm like, can you imagine having to sit down with your child and tell them that your mother or your father's not coming home? And even, it gets me. And I was just like, there's all these funds being put into mental health initiatives like by the government, but yet if we look into stats and data, the suicide rates are increasing. So what is that showing us? There's a disconnection. So I reached out to all the organizations, pretty much got a thank you, but no thank you. And I understand there's a lot of advocates. So I don't know. I always say to people that I think this caused something in me that was far bigger than my ego to give a damn about what people thought. I wanted to try and make a change, not just a small change, but a ripple effect globally. Because if we make something go large in America, everybody hears about it. And I said, it doesn't just need to be small, it needs to be a cultural change. And you can get divided when it comes to a cultural change, because some people aren't used to things that change and some people are. So you can cause a division, but at the same time, unless you make a cultural change, nothing tends to happen. So that was the beginning.
Question, as you, and I may brutalize this metaphor, but as your lens of how you perceived yourself began to change and evolve, did your perception of the people that you were shooting through a literal lens also begin to change and evolve? Did your photography, did your art change? And do you ever look back on the work that you were doing in the first year or two when you were going through your metamorphosis? Do you ever look back on your work and say, I can fucking see that I was going through something there? Is it evident that you were changing?
Yeah, throughout all my work, I've seen it. And it's so funny. I think when we go through adversity, I've never been spiritual or anything like this, but the more interviews I've done with a lot of these highly prolific figures, when they've been through severe adversity, it's almost like they come to a place of like surrender and believing in something else. And I suppose with me, again, I'll bring the word intuitionally. I feel like I've been given this key where I can pull a story out of somebody. People feel comfortable. So if you look in my work and you see how it's evolved, you will see that when I get with somebody, people say, how do you shoot these people? I'm like, I sit and I listen intently. And then I don't direct. I just get them into a safe space. And for 2 to 3 minutes, it's like an instantaneous. I get that sweet spot. And people then see that image and go, oh my God, how did you get it? And I just think it's an innate ability that because you've been through something, you can see that pivotal moment when someone else has. And I think as it's evolved, and I look back at how I was working, I once did bring the question up to some friends. And I said, if you look at my work and how it's evolved, I said, did you never think to reach out to me and go, hey, Glenn, are you okay? Because I think sometimes we cry out through our work, indirectly or directly, and we try and drop hints. And this is where people don't pick it up. But again, you can't blame people as well, because we need to be more educated on it. But there are indirect little things that you build up. And I think through my work, when I was going through that stage, you will see the evolution of it all.
Yeah, it's such an important insight, because I think just from the world of, I guess, photography and where that comes from, and that's something that's never even crossed my mind before, to think that you would by getting deeper into someone's kind of backstory, their history, what they're going through, would enable you to shoot something differently. And I know I've been privileged to look at, a lot of your art and the stuff you're posting, and it truly does kind of come through in that environment. Is it something that you found, and especially, and I'm just kind of relating this in my head, I'm thinking about the photography that I've seen of yours, which is where we kind of first connected, and you were taking a lot of pictures of, the presenters, the trainers, the instructors in the Les Mills world. And there's some, let's be quite honest, some gorgeous human beings in that world that you're taking pictures of, that are up there on stage, they're in front of thousands of people. When you're shooting those, obviously that's a bit more of a far. I just wonder whether the fitness community that you're shooting, is it because of everything that's behind fitness, building our bodies, looking better, feeling better, is it harder to dig down deep with those people? Or, is it easier because you're from the same background?
I would actually say it's harder. So why I've decided to do what I've done and go for the leaders of those industries, whatever industry it might be. So Les Mills, Rachel Newsham, she's a very good friend of mine. We see her. She's got millions of fans, and she's on stages worldwide. And when I approached her from knowing her, she said yes straight away. And I said, why is that? So I always listen. And she said, you know what? I was having a hard time with social media myself because I was seeing highlight reels and I was seeing everyone living this ultimate life. And she was like, it wasn't resonating with me because people don't see what goes on behind the scenes of Les Mills International. She was like, we do videos, we do this, we do this. Then it has to go to music labels to see if we can do it. I'm up all hours. I don't really get a break. And everyone just sees the finished product. And when I started seeing your visual like take on showing the reality of people like us who have got a platform, it drew me straight in. And attesting to your question there, I actually had a couple of the big guys over in Gold's Gym over in America who came on board, but yet there was a big disconnection because they were happy to come on board the campaign, but yet not share their image on their platform, which we had a whole conversation around that. And I said, I'm not here to judge because it is very personal. If you're not in that stage of talking about it, I totally respect that. However, people are going to start asking questions if I put your image onto the campaign because it's redirectly going to take them to you. If you're not ready, I work with a lot of professionals in the space. Let's leave it off until you're ready. And then some of them said, well, I am ready. So I'd question and say, so you're this prolific figure in the fitness world. You've got all these followers. Imagine how much you could impact them by saying, hey, hold on. Do you know what actually goes into getting a body like this? Or everything's based on aesthetics. But really, to be at the top of your game, whatever profession, fitness or not, it's bloody hard work. And we go through mental struggles. We go through sacrifice. So yeah, both ends of the spectrums really. It is hard, but unless you get to the top people that are actually going, I'm willing to speak out, and it causes that ripple effect where people go, okay, so-and-so spoken, so I feel a little bit more like it's normalized.
Yeah, for sure.
So for the layperson listening to this around the world, in your words, Glenn, what does imperfectly perfect actually mean? And what are some ways that you've had to apply that mantra to your own life in order to walk that path, in order to live it?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that, if anyone goes through to my podcast, it's one of the leading questions I ask every single person. And it's so profound because it means so many different things to every single person. There's no 1-2 thing. But with me, it's leading by our flaws. God made us the way we are for a purpose. And it's to lead by being that authentic, true self to us by our imperfections. Like that is all. And if I relate that back to my life, it literally is. Everybody sees or what they think is success. Glenn, you're here, you're there, you're doing publicity, you're doing this. Behind the scenes, I unravel it by showing the behind the scenes. And I'm like, when I did a podcast, I was like, I led by my imperfections. I had no clue. I had GarageBand and a laptop and I pressed play. Like I had no clue. And they're like, how are you getting all these celebrities? And I was going, I picked up the phone. I was like, everyone's human. And Gareth, you can attest, when you're in fitness, I used to teach group fitness classes. People would come in that room. They don't come in a suit. So it goes out the window. Everyone comes in for a commonality of culture, community, feeling good. And it's like, hey, Gareth, how you doing? You don't speak about what profession you are. And I suppose I've always taken that outside and led by my imperfections. And because I've gone through that stage of comparison syndrome and thinking I needed to be a certain way. So I suppose I can say I was trying to be perfect and please people, to now just living unapologetically in my truth. And look how far it's gone. Like there's something to be said in when you step into that truth and you lead by your imperfections and just know, you know what, I'm comfortable with myself. I was made this way. You're going to attract your audience, whether it's in business, whether it's in life, and stop sweating the small stuff about trying to please people and be this ideal of perfection, because it's not real.
Yeah. It's almost as though if imposter syndrome is the poison, then embracing imperfectly perfect is sort of the remedy. You know, because Gareth and I have talked about this a lot over the past few years, and the more our podcast grows, and to be honest, Glenn, the more conversations we have with world-renowned people such as yourself, we still battle with imposter syndrome, showing up an authentic version of ourselves. But if we can go into new experiences saying that we will be imperfectly perfect and fuck it to the rest, what a profound amount of weight we'll be able to put down, eh, Gareth?
Just creates in the picture in my head is the beautiful world that we will live in if everyone does 1% more in that direction. Like it just almost everything that's a struggle in the world we'd be turning the corner on stuff with that. And it's so important. And one thing that really resonated for me that I think I really want to come back to is you mentioned the world of group fitness. And I know that's a key kind of, background for both of us in our past, but just that for anyone that doesn't, hasn't been in that world, hasn't been to, any kind of group fitness style in a studio aerobics class, what that gives. And I spoke about this on an episode a while back with a colleague of mine about the belonging in that room, in that world. And it doesn't have to be a group fitness world. It could be the BJJ gym that you go and roll at with your friends. It might be the gym. It might be a book club. It could be literally anything. But when you find somewhere that you belong, and we remove we're going to quote it as the suit. You remove the suit from that person, or you remove their label and their identity, and we're all together, and there isn't any of that. There's a belonging that hopefully, if you're in the right environment, is going to bring out that vulnerability and allow people the permission to be themselves. And it kind of takes those barriers out. And, we live by, our tagline at We Are Start Talking is surround yourselves. And it's not just surrounding yourself with people, it's surrounding yourself with environments. And I think that's just so important. And I wonder if there's anything that, you're seeing, Glenn, in your world that is speaking to that, we're going to call it our mission, because that's kind of, it's part of our mission to surround ourselves and have everyone else do it. Do you see that as a barrier, or either maybe an entry in the worlds that you kind of are in and operate in?
I think it's changing, which I do love. And I love how you explained it all in that sense. Then you just summed it up. What I'm seeing is this imposter syndrome. So say for this new application that's on what I was just chatting about with the Clubhouse thing, it's more apparent the more and more that you moderate these rooms and you talk, that you're getting different levels of success, or what people perceive. You're getting startups, you're getting entrepreneurs, you're getting executives. And when you break down those barriers, everyone's vulnerable. Everyone's dealing with imposter syndrome at all different levels. Like they always say, new levels bring new devils. I actually posted a thing on my account today, and it was taking me back 1.5 years ago, because what I've built has gone really, really fast, which I always say I'm grateful for. But I posted it today, and it was like, I lost myself in trying to please everybody, but now I'm losing everyone whilst I'm trying to find myself. And that in itself, you don't need to say no more, because we have to learn these lessons and these boundaries. And what I've learned over my time is, as much as it seems hard, and we have trouble with imposter syndrome, because we're always constantly thinking this fear of judgment and having this ego around, my self-doubt. And it's because obviously we've got suppressed emotions from probably listening to our parents, whether it's around money back in the day. If you didn't come from much and you wanted something and your parents said, put it down, we can't afford that. That's gone into your subconscious, and that's what we carry on. And as much as we don't think it has, it shows in later on. If you're struggling for money, there's a reason you're struggling, because you don't think you're worth it. And I suppose the more and more I've been moderating and seeing, and the people that I associate with now, and then different levels, that's how I built my consulting business off the side. Because there's too many people out there going, I can teach you through my program how I made 6, 7, 8 figures. Whereas I break it down from a point of view of empathy and compassion and go, you know what, I think that's amazing. However, a lot of people are at the point, they don't want to go from A to Z. They want to go from A to B. They're stuck in there. So how are you going to get them, whether you follow your program or not? Because it's a system of sales funnels and all this. So I combine modalities and mindset with the business, because one without the other, you're still holding on to your emotions that are holding you back. There's a reason that we keep going in this cycle, not getting to that level that we want. And it's showing the vulnerability. I think it's changing, because I think the narrative around vulnerability being seen as a strength is becoming a lot more apparent, especially during COVID. We're we're not taking away that we've lost people. I sadly lost my grandma to COVID, but on the other side of things, I always say, what it is showing us is a different side, which is the human race, regardless of materialistic stuff. We're seeing that experiences and relationships are more important than the external stuff like money and all the value that people think it should be about.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, to the listeners around the world, you'll pick up that Glenn, you're in Australia, correct?
Yep, originally from Manchester, though, in England.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, there's Gareth. When Gareth first moved to Canada, everybody used to always say, "Oh, I love your accent. Are you from Australia?" And then he'd slap them. But the UK is not known for embracing a vulnerable people. And I obviously I don't know your parents or your childhood, but was vulnerability part of your vocabulary throughout your entire life? Was the confidence to be vulnerable part of your vocabulary throughout your entire life? And were those examples set by your parents or your siblings? As Gareth said, surround yourself. Or is vulnerability sort of your A to B? Is vulnerability one of your many steps on your journey that you had to figure out a way to embrace?
I would say the latter, what you just said there. It's from my A to B. I had a great upbringing, and I can only thank my parents for having brought me up in a great life. However, if I was to think back, if I was upset or my sister was upset, it'd be embraced, but I don't think we openly sat around a table having dinner and speaking about mental health. I don't think it was something that even was in the vocabulary like back in the day. And as I've grown, and even with this campaign as big as it started, and my parents still in the UK, like I had a conversation with my mum a while ago, and she was like, when are you going to stop? Like, you've done so well, but like, what is this driving you? Like, you're so relentless. She was like, where did you get this from? Because it's not me or your dad. And I was like, thanks for the support, Mum. And she's like, no, you know I support you in everything you do. But she was like, where does it end? And I was like, when I make a change, like a cultural change. And she was like, oh, well, good on you. And then she actually told me, like, she didn't understand it. She knew my story, but the passion behind it. And then about 3 months later, I got a call and she was upset. And one of her friends who she'd worked with, she'd actually lost to suicide. There was a thing that happened. And she was like, I get it. I now get it. And then I had my cousin who I used to look up to. And you know, when you're young and you look up to someone in your family, and I always wanted a brother and I had a sister, and he was the older cousin and he had a car and he was out with his mates. And I always wished that he was my brother so he could take me out. And I always looked at him as like, oh, he's so cool. Like Scott, I want to be like him. And he reached out to me probably 6 months ago. And he was like, you know what, cousin, I'm so proud of you. He was like, I haven't told anyone, but I've been struggling with severe like anxiety for the past year or so. And I just don't know how to get out with it. And I was like, that's somebody who I looked up to. So yeah, it's something that I've had to embrace and learn lessons, hit boundaries, sacrifice, suffering, realizations, associate myself with some of the biggest people that people look up to, and then try and change it, because I'm like, these people have still reached millions of dollars, success, and they don't attribute it to not sharing their story. So many people don't. And I don't like the way that when you go for a job, I'm trying to change this. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but still to this day, on a lot of applications, one of the questions is always, do you or have you suffered with mental health? Well, what am I supposed to write? Mild anxiety, clinical depression, bipolar? Like, is that going to mean that I'm going to go from not getting a job to a job? Because I'll tell you something, if you've been at the bottom of despair going through clinical depression and you've managed to come out the other side, you're bloody good to hire. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, that's a strength you can't teach. You know,
exactly.
If somebody can embrace their vulnerability and get the resources and the help and the support that they need, that's a resilience that I would hire anytime.
I would.
I had a smile when you were talking about your mom, because my mom, I'm adopted and my parents are from the UK. And I remember a few years back when I was building this podcast platform and I had written a book, and my mom looked at me square in the eye and she says, and I can't do the accent, so I'm not going to, but she said, I don't know who the fuck you are. How do you think of these things? Where does this come from? I never taught you this. And it was tempered with love and support, and it was a bit of a joke, but I can certainly appreciate your mom saying to you, where did you get this from? I don't understand.
Yeah.
It really makes you realize how, I guess, how kind of small, like we're all in a similar kind of, generation. So how small the world was. And it makes me realize, hearing those two stories, and my story is the same. Like, my mum still has no fucking idea what I do. And she actually has started listening to the podcast. So if you're listening to this, hi mum, and this is what I do. So, but everything, even like fitness, like she's been to a few events and things I've presented at, but she still really doesn't kind of get. She's people ask her, she's like, oh, like this is like fitness stuff. She's like no idea what I do. So, and I think that's just a generation thing, because the world is it was viewed through a small lens then, right? There was no internet when they were growing up. So there wasn't the exposure that we have now. Like now, if I don't know what somebody does for a job, I just Google it and I find it out, right? I can figure it out, and I can see, like, a lot of my stuff's online, so people can see that stuff. And I just think that's, on a positive note, is it's really opening the world up to that stuff, so we can understand. And part of that is listening, right? Is finding out what other people do. And that's where we're looking for guests, and we're building the platform, is trying to find people in diverse things and bring them onto the show and hear their stories. And understanding that world is a big part of that. So I think we got a lot to be thankful for, that, we're able to raise, we're all dads, so we're raised to raise our kids with that much more global awareness, which I think will complement everything we're talking about.
I just think in a day, like, one of the things with the campaign is to create a legacy for our children. And I tell people on the mission to embrace it and to join us, to empower their kids and leave it for future generations. Because as much as we want to change it, and I see a lot of people trying to create awareness for our generation, let's face it, that stigma's there. Mm-hmm. We can change it, we can open the dialogue, but it's there. It's come from our parents. If anybody looks into the behind the scenes of all this campaign, my background was health and fitness. And then, whether it was serendipitous or what, there were some guys who worked into my gym that I was running on construction. They were doing night shift. And I said, you guys are always in here. What's your hours? How much you're earning? And in my head, I'm going, okay, if I want to take this global, I'm going to jump in construction. I've not done since like college years. And I'm going to do night shift. I'm going to do it X amount of months. I'll put some money to the side, mortgage, family, go to America, take this there. And that Friday, I quit my job. And then the following Monday, I got my white card and then jumped on construction. So for 12 to 14 months, probably 14 months, it was 6 days a week, 12-hour days, getting up at 4:30 in the morning so I could complete like studies and all this kind of stuff, getting home, spending time with the kids, getting not even into bed till like maybe midnight, and then getting up at 4 again, because I was networking, learning how to do media kits, press releases. People don't see that side. But what I learned from being on construction, it was that the young guys were like, oh, what are you doing this for? And I told them, and they was like, that's incredible, Glenn, that's amazing. And then there'd be some of the older generation, and they'd be like, yeah, I don't get it. And I'm like, what don't you get? And they'd be like, well, I wouldn't tell anyone. And I was like, but that's the problem. So you'll notice on the bio on the actual campaign, it's like, how would you champion your mother, your brother, your sister, your whatever it is, if they were struggling with mental health? Unfortunately, that older generation, like, we really need to break down barriers. And what you said there, attesting to your mum, like my mum admitted that she'd been struggling recently, and I tried to help her. But those people that are close to you, sometimes, like, I had to pass them on to somebody else, because the older generation, unfortunately, sometimes said, and this is what I got told, I don't want to be told what I'm doing wrong, or I don't want to. And I removed myself and I said, I'm here to listen. I am your son. I love you. I've got trained, but I'm here to listen. And straight away it was into that whole notion. And I loved my mum to bits, but she didn't want anyone to talk to about it. So I had to like pass her on to somebody I knew. And yeah, it's just really, it's one of those hard topics.
I mean, I'm always curious with somebody that's well-traveled, such as yourself, and you haven't not. I'm fairly well traveled if you consider resorts, all inclusive resorts destinations. But if not, then I'm fairly ignorant. But for someone like you that's well traveled and has actually bothered to absorb the culture and their surroundings, are you finding that different countries around the world are managing mental health better or worse than other countries? And if the answer is yes, who, in your opinion, based on where you've been or your knowledge, which country is really an ambassador for mental health advocacy and awareness? And then, so we're recording in Canada, you're in Australia, we have listeners in 70 countries around the world. I'd love to know, who should we be taking as the best case example?
So now I've got an international team. I actually get everyone to look into this and to see what everyone's doing. And everyone is doing incredible things. I'm never going to take that away. There's things that I believe we could do better. But again, it's getting to the top people of power that you can actually get in front and say. Here in Australia, you will laugh, but I actually, through some friends, we got into the mental health commissioners' chambers at Parliament House. And they originally thought I'd gone in for a grant. So they was coming out and I was like, you've probably met a different kettle of fish, because I'm not coming looking for money. Like, my campaign's never been led by money. It's brought everyone together to try and make change. I said, but within Australia, there was this huge campaign out that went nationwide. So I don't know how much money was spent on it. And it was a little old lady with a bunch of flowers. And then it was talking about mental health or something about she'd lost her husband. Now, to me, and I said to this lady, I said, people are time poor. So they're going to walk past and disconnect because they're going to see a little old lady with a bunch of flowers. They're not going to connect it to mental health. Second of all, you've cut out a whole generation. Like, people are going to see it and turn off. Whereas, and I wouldn't just attest it to my campaign, but I said, anybody that's got somebody, I shouldn't say it in this way, but like in the public domain that people recognize. So you'll see someone on mine and you'll see, like, say, Angie Everhart or one of the guys from Baywatch, and you'll see that image. First of all, your first reaction is like, oh, what's that about? Is it a new film? Is it a new, what is it? So you're going to look into it, then read their story, and then obviously go to everything else we do. But in accordance to what you were saying, I wouldn't want to comment and say one person's doing different. I think there's a lot of things that people are doing amazing. And one of my things, and it is an audacious goal that I'm determined to do, is actually try and be that umbrella where I go, okay, this government's putting this much money in here. This is here. I want to then start, we're working with some leading people that are literally looking more into the stats and the data and going, this country's obviously doing this well. You guys are doing this well. Why aren't we doing like the round table, like the World Health Organization towards mental health? And there will be, but let's create some synergy as well, a little bit more, so we can try and bring it back to basics, because things aren't led by money. And that's why we're losing people. You see government throwing money to these initiatives, which is amazing, because then you get more research done, you get all this. At the end of the day, look at my campaign. Who am I? I always say, I am somebody. I'm Glenn. But in the relation or scheme of things, how is this one guy who knew nobody, who was merely a photographer in the fitness world, managed to gain something that's gone global? One of the most publicized campaigns, brought all these huge celebrities on board, didn't know anybody. What is he doing right? But I haven't heard from anybody in power that has seen it, other than several organizations, when all the publicity is there, then wanting to collaborate. But I'm not one to then go, yes, so you can navigate things towards what you're doing. This isn't led by money, and that's why it's growing. And we're putting free things on, which is much detriment to myself, because I've been putting money in to keep this going. And we've put free resources on because, unfortunately, in America, people aren't eligible for insurance. If they can't afford it, they don't get help. Then in Australia and the UK, at times, you don't meet a certain criteria to be eligible to get therapy sessions on a reduced rate. What happens with those people? So I put virtual hangouts on, reached out to international psychologists, therapists, got some of the faces of the campaign, these big celebrities, and said, look, unfortunately, there's no money there to pay you, but I know you guys are huge advocates. Do you want to come on? And these group therapy sessions got to like 50, 60 people and started growing. And to me, it was just sitting back and going, this is what it's about.
Yeah, man.
So
I want to ask a potentially unfair question, and then I might shut up for a bit. I've spent my allowance money, so and this is the unfair part, and I should disclaim, in my opinion, we as human beings, first world, privileged first world human beings, and I won't mention specifics because I don't want to piss anybody off even more than I'm about to, but we do have a pretty good history of causes or awareness being fashionable. And it's the cause of the year, and it gets all kinds of media attention, and a few celebrities slap their name on it, and a few people go to jail, and it raises millions of dollars, and then the cause seems to just not exist. You wake up one fucking morning and it's gone. How do you, I was about to say we, but how do you ensure that your mental health advocacy, that your campaign and your foundation isn't, I'm doing air quotes to the listeners around the world, isn't just fashionable, and that it never goes away? How do you guard against that?
Well, this is one of my pain points, exactly what you was just mentioning there. We've seen it, and it does affect a lot of people. There's some initiatives out there that really get highlighted at certain times of the year. And for me, I like to do my research and see how it impacts people. And we actually did one in Australia after one of these days. And it was a prolific figure on my campaign, and actually did a whole press release on it going, but what happens now? What happens the day after the whole charade, the whole, like, let's get everyone talking? What happens the day after? So with me, anybody that comes on the campaign, the advocacy, for 18 months it's gone on now, you will have original content every single day, 365 days a year. You can imagine behind the scenes of the first year, that was me, myself, and I. And I was just so relentless, like people say, and they're like, you don't miss a heartbeat. You literally don't. I'm like, no, because I'm so passionate about saying this isn't one of those. And again, like, I'm not here to piss people off, but it's not one of those like once a month or once a year or once a, like, I'm not led by money or driven by money. It's about getting the message out and saying, let's show up every day. So these advocates that are coming on board, I'm like saying, if you're coming on board, I am grateful, I'm thankful, but let's keep this conversation going. So do a post at least every couple of days, or talk about it and lead the initiative the right way, instead of, like you said there, sometimes when we see people jump on things, they are advocates. They've got so much things going on in their world that sometimes they may forget. So again, we can't hold judgment. However, let's in our everyday life, make sure these conversations are happening, and that can happen around the table at home. And then what that's going to happen is you're going to teach your children to take that out into the world. But in a sense, if I bring it back to the campaign and me, you will not see anything missed every single day, whether that's myself or someone on my team, and any of the advocates on there, they go out. And yeah, I'm not one of these that I'm going to do a big event once a year. I personally don't believe it. And that's one of the reasons, I'll tell you really quickly, that when people said for ages, is it a non-for-profit? Are you doing what? Like, where are you going? And I was like, very British here. I was like, it's grown that bloody fast. I haven't got a clue. I don't know the difference between this and that. I'm like, why is everyone rushing it? Like, there's no rush. We're creating awareness. Like, I need to build credibility so that people take us seriously and keep this going. So I got with an attorney, found out the difference between them all. And I always laugh because I say, you know what? The premise how I want to work is, and you can laugh, I want to be like Robin Hood. I want to go to the people who can afford it, the organizations that lead things, get their money, provide a service, and give to the grassroots level, like the caseworkers that are actually in the trenches and deal daily, and not sit behind a desk and just go, here's a check and sign it off. I want everybody that works with me or is around me to lead by compassion and actually put the people that are making a difference in the local communities. The big ones are amazing. They get the grants to do funding and research. But let's also look at the people who are actually in their local communities making a real difference. A good friend of mine in the UK, she grew up with anorexia. She lost a friend to suicide, and she realized her parents nearly lost her due to anorexia. And she realized she was killing herself to it, and they wanted to make a change. So they actually created this little initiative that during COVID, they had all these fundraising things, but all got cancelled, and they needed help because they were getting inundated with calls and they couldn't continue. And people said to me, like, where can we fundraise? Where can we donate to you? And I said, you know what? I said, thank you, but I don't want you to donate to us. I want us to make the money so we can give back to you guys. Because a lot of the time you see people donating, but yet who's giving back to the people that donate? If I donated $10,000 to somewhere and the next week I was struggling on my arse and I actually reach back out and go, oh my God, I know I raised you $10,000, but now I really need that money to pay my bills. Like, a lot of these people would be thankful for the money, but they wouldn't know who you was because they're getting that many people donate. So for me, it was just about bringing it back and going, I just want to make a difference my way, go to organizations as a for-profit so we can get paid for bringing this team of professionals together to provide that service to you guys. Then you don't get the tax rebate. So it shows me that you're really invested and not just putting something in and then not following up. And then literally, I want to be like one of those people that, you know, where you see where someone wins the lottery and you can just give them a check. I want to be one of those people that actually goes to them, and not for show, not for a picture, but just to go, there you go.
And would you make it one of the big oversized checks?
I would, but I wouldn't do it for like when people do it for the Photoshop opportunity and it's kind of that. I'd just be like, here you go. So all the kids and all those people could see it, that they just got it and it meant something to them.
Yeah. That's put happiness first and money will follow.
Yep.
They always say that.
Yeah.
It's so true. And it actually reminds me, when you were talking there, Glenn, me and Carl had a conversation, kind of not really related to what we're talking about, but it was a conversation about kind of the, like you said, the planning and where's this going to go. And, we were talking about many things, and it was kind of the general conversation. And what we kind of came to this realization in the conversation, that we just need to be present in the moment, keep doing what we're doing, and it will evolve where it evolves. And you've got to let it do that, right? But the key is, if you spend your time overthinking or planning, this is what this is going to be, that's what that's going to be, is that takes away from you being present. And it also takes away from, and this touches me a lot for the coaching side of, what I do, is it's just that daily action. It's every day making a post. It's every day editing a podcast or recording a podcast, or, whatever it might be in your day, whatever you're striving for. I just think that's such an important message for anybody. And it could be as simple as your own selfish goal that you're trying to achieve. It's January, we're recording right now. Maybe it's your New Year's resolution or the goal, the thing you're working on. It's the same thing. Like, don't get stuck in 12 months from now. Just turn up every day, continue to take action, and what will happen will happen. And you're a great, example of that with the campaign. Is it's gone where it's gone because it sounds like you've just been in it.
Well, I think too many people put their happiness based on an outcome, whether personal or professional. And the amount of coaching that I've done with people, and it's the same thing. And it comes from lived experience. Like, you're trying to do all this, you're trying to build your business. At the same time, you're telling yourself that I'll get to my family because I'm doing this for my family. And once I'm there, and I've got that happiness, then I can pull back and I can spend time with my family. But even my wife at one stage, and this is why I'm so transparent, she said to me, yeah, but you might get there, but we're not going to be there with you because you're going to have lost us a long time ago. And people forget this, that they're too busy rushing ahead all the time. And it's experiences along the way. And you guys doing this podcast, I always say, there's no secret pill. When people say, do my program, I can get you here, and it. Yeah, they can. But if your mindset's not there, then how are you going to do it? I believe, and why I've been what people see as successful, is building genuine relationships. It takes one person to hear your podcast that go, these guys are doing something incredible. I want to invest in them. I want to partner with them. that's been my whole campaign. I haven't worried about like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do. That's why I call it Imperfectly Perfect. And when I do my podcast, you should hear the beginning. I've got some huge names on there now. And I'm like, don't think I'm like one of these professional host guys. I'm just me, myself, and I. And I'm like, I just press play and I just talk. And yeah, but it just works. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. I can't be. I'm from Yorkshire. Do you know what I mean? So as much as I try, I'm just like, yeah. You know what?
You'd probably get like 20 of your Yorkshire mates giving you a call up and just saying, Glenn, what the fuck are you doing?
Yes, all the time. But I said, you know, I keep telling everybody, 2021, lead with your imperfections. And you will notice your life change. Opportunities, if you just speak your truth, step into it and just go, you know what? People are going to judge me whether I'm trying to get somewhere or whether I'm not. I'm going to do it for me this year.
And that's, you said it about half an hour ago, slightly differently, but the meaning's the same. You said lead by your flaws, but lead with your imperfections, same, philosophically the same. And Glenn, it is, obviously you realize this, that is the complete opposite of the puke that we're forced to digest on social media every single day. We are seeing, as you said earlier, you used the term the highlight reel, which we've talked a lot about over the years. We're seeing these perfect highlight reels of people, and that's our benchmark. That's our litmus for perfection. When what you're suggesting is lead with your imperfections, and that doesn't mean, you know, become a great big fat guy with with an alcohol problem who gambles his kids' college funds away. Being imperfect is not an excuse to not be the best version of yourself.
Exactly right. Because we've all got, we're obviously all put on this earth for a reason. We just have to find that. But because of external environments, like we as I say, we've suppressed them all. But if you're going to lead and try and be perfect, as I said, one of the best things, I've now got to meet some people who are multimillionaires, and they now don't talk about it. They're just kind of like, you know what you come to realize is that we're up here, people see us up here on this pedestal, but they don't realize what comes with running a multi-million-dollar business. Comes $1 million problems. It's that new levels, new devils things. Whereas everybody here thinks it's the ultimate life. And even some A-list celebrities that I've got to meet, I'm now going, wow, like they can't speak to who they want. They can't just go anywhere they want. They have to get the manager's position to do what they want, permission. And yet they sometimes look at us in our position and go, wouldn't it be nice just to go out with my friends and go down the street? But yet we're all in this constant cycle of thinking everyone's life is so much better. And when it comes to these self-proclaimed gurus going, I can get you the ultimate life in short succession, I just try and teach people when I'm coaching them, I'm going, stop looking at metrics. I'm now talking with some of these people who are really successful. They might have like 200 followers on Instagram. They haven't got time to concentrate on metrics. Like they're looking at metrics when it comes to their end line on whatever they're selling. Like that's what they're looking at, metrics, because followers don't equate to a success. They've got influencers that we all know. There's a big disparity with me. I'm going, there's influencers, there's influential people making a difference. So an influencer, they might have a lot of followers, but 9 out of 10 times, most of them do not know how to monetize that. So you can have as many, and unfortunately, we get tied up into this highlight reel of thinking, oh, they're doing this. And I won't lie to say I didn't. That's where my problem came from. That's why I did the whole campaign as disrupt social media, disrupt corporate silence, because it's an endless cycle. And I'm just saying, lead by the heart. If you're going to follow someone else's program, how are you stepping into your truth as well? Their systems might work. You might get the money, but you might not be led by money. So for me, I was told one thing, what someone told me. The campaign, it was doing amazing things. I started coaching, and somebody said to me, I was known as the singlet guy, which you'll know I've got a singlet on. I just put a shirt on because I put the aircon on and it's quite cold in here now. But someone once told me, they was like, oh, Glenn, you know what I think you need to do? I think you need to start putting a suit on and living from the end and set yourself in all this. And I'm always like, you know, I'm going to try it. I'm going to listen. So I did for about a week. And I put blockages on myself. I didn't get no clients. I didn't get the campaign stalled. So I turned it inside and I was like, what am I doing to attract this? Or rather, why am I blocking it? And then I went really deep inside and I was like, you know what, Glenn, how have you come so far? People have been attracted to you for one reason. You was being yourself. You stepped into your imperfections and your truth. So I took it back off. I was in my bloody singlet and I was like, hey guys, so I'm back in my singlet, went into LinkedIn, which is a professional network, with my singlet. And I was like, you know what, guys, I like to say my truth. I'll lead with my heart. I'm here to tell you, I tried this because someone told me and they followed Bob Proctor. I said, that's Bob Proctor's truth. He might be led by money. That might be his driving purpose. It isn't mine. So when I did that, I put a blockage on myself. If you're finding the same, you could be doing exactly the same. I want to take note, to listen. It didn't work. I went back to my truth. I realized why people were attracted to what I was doing. It was me for me. And then I started flowing again. I got probably 25 messages in my inbox. Nobody wanted to admit it on their comments, on my comments, in my inbox, and said, thank you for that. I did exactly the same. I was trying to lead by perfectionism that so many people do through marketing, but I wasn't attracting my audience. Mm-hmm. And my business went nowhere.
And just for the 1/3 of the audience, 1/3 of the attendees on this podcast tonight, a singlet is a tank top?
Yes, he's a tank top. Sorry.
Okay. And for the other 72 countries around the world listening, it's a sleeveless tank top, of which evidently Glenn is most comfortable wearing a tank top, and that's what he lives in. So
it's amazing. I think two big things from that. Number one is I will continue to work in my pajamas because it's my true authentic self, and I shall never put a suit on as per your advice. So, and I'm already married, so I haven't really got many other
careful
environments where I need to wear a suit anymore, and I just sit in my basement and work all day right now. So I've been wearing track pants for 20 years, so I'm going to keep doing that. It made me, I was talking about a few things that came up, and we did an Instagram live back in the summer. And we spoke a lot about the kind of surround yourself model. And although we use it as our kind of, what we live by in our tagline, we also spoke about how there's many kind of almost like a triangle, and there's all these different points. And one of the points there's not many, there's 3 because it's a triangle. But on the 3rd point, we spoke about the surround yourself also being what you digest. And what you digest is something that really rang true to me with what you said, is that on social media, you have a lot of these influencers that are, or just people, not even influencers, but people out there that are putting out the absolute trash that we don't want to be absorbing. However, I think we're so guilty of thinking we're ignoring that. It's on there, but we're not really paying attention. However, it is influencing us. Because we're allowing it to be part of what we digest through our eyes, through our brain. Like, our brains are smart and they're taking that on board. And I just think that's such a massive, massive thing that we should all be aware of. And, I've made a conscious effort since we did that IG live. And, I went through and started deleting accounts, and anything that came up where I was like, that doesn't make me feel good. For whatever reason, maybe it was a comparison thing. It was just someone where I was like, that doesn't feel authentic. And so I just got rid of them, and I really started to dial into what I believed was truth. And it's interesting that when I've done that, I've noticed that, and this might not always be the case, but some of the people that have an online presence because it's their business, the ones with the big followers are truly showing up authentically. And when I say big followers, you might get someone that's posting loads of great, like, half nude pictures that's got 40,000 followers. We all know who's following that and why they're following it. But then you've got these people that have got millions of followers, and they are, a lot of the time, if it's not like an A-list celebrity. And I think actually just this week, I released an episode with Jordan Syatt, who's a big fitness trainer from New York. And that was a big thing. Like, his following, he's so authentic. And for me, I was like, they're the kind of people I want to see. And he just talks his truth on his channel. And we spoke a lot on the show about it. And I just think it was so important. And the reason I wanted him on was for all the things you've been speaking about, because he opened up and he was himself, and he shared where he struggled and what he needed to do. And he spoke about his journey through therapy and anxiety, and everybody hearing that and then looking at what he's produced in his fitness world and his business is amazing to see. But he's done it through his struggles and through his authenticity. So yeah, be aware, people. Get on those. If you're on those social media channels, get on there and start deleting people that are not making you feel good on a daily basis.
But you will know in the fitness industry, when you see that, I started working with a lot of coaches, and I pretty much turned two of them to be known as celebrity trainers through authenticity, and how I'm able to teach people how to network properly and to get in front of the right people and build exposure around leading with the vulnerability. So anybody that comes to me, I'm like, okay, first we need to work through your mindset to see where you're at. We need to see why you're copying all these other people that are pretty much aesthetic based. That's not an influence, because people get turned off by that a lot of the times as well. People are only following it because it's a pretty picture. Yeah, they're very bloody good and they look like they've done amazing things. But I also turned around to my personal trainer and taught him a lesson once that I said, when I was going through my bad stage of body dysmorphia, when I got through it, I actually said to him, you know what, I've got to be honest with you. I said, you weren't part of the problem directly, but indirectly, I was training with you for over 6 months whilst I was going through this, or maybe a year. I can't even remember. It was that long ago. I said, but all I kept on seeing on social media was you posting the guys who were getting results in 6 weeks or 12 weeks. So presumably they were jumping on something, but that's all I kept on seeing, you marketing them. Now, indirectly, I felt like a little kid again, that my dad wasn't proud of me. You were my coach. It was almost like, well, I'm not showing Glenn because he's not getting the results that these guys are going, and that's better for my marketing. Now you have to be careful of all the rest of your clients, how they're perceiving this. It's not like I wanted to be thrust into the limelight, but at the same time, I was just seeing these guys and going, hold on a minute, how am I not getting those results? Is he not proud of me? But yet I'm doing 2 times a week and I'm doing this. And that was playing with my head, and it plays with a lot of people's head. And for him to take that on and digest it, he actually did a dissertation at university on it, on body dysmorphia from me. And it taught him a valuable lesson. And he said, thank you. He was like, I didn't know. So I now work with quite a few personal trainers that want to build their profile, but get them out of the whole mentality of, I empower women, I empower men, and follow this sales script, and I can make you X amount. Because, you know, in the fitness industry, you all of a sudden see these guys who who you worked with, they never had a really credible or big business within a gym facility. All of a sudden, they're these gurus that are making people 6-7 figures online. Yet how did they suddenly go from struggling as a PT in a club to going online and finding the secret without following a program? But yet none of them are known as like authority figures. And you can Google. I always say people in the know will go to Google and find credible sources that back up what they're saying online. And a lot of them people aren't backed up because they're not. And you see it, you pick holes in it. People flashing the cash and go, oh, 6-7 figures. I made this much last week, and actually show you the bank balance. And you're like, who shows how much finances they're making? Like, not anybody that's actually really credible, because they're not all about, look at me. They're too busy making the money. Yeah. So for any listeners listening out there who do fall into that trap, and hey, I'm saying it from a place that we've all been there, like, just go back to being you and surround yourself with people. Like attracts like. And if you're into that sort of stuff, you're going to keep getting more and more of it, and it's going to keep showing up. So like you said there, delete. Yeah. It doesn't make you feel good, delete.
We've had a number of guests on over the past year, and I know that Gareth and I have talked a lot about how the moving your body and physical fitness, exercise, for lack of a better word, has a direct correlation to, not always, but often, a direct correlation to improved mental health. If you work your body and you get the dopamine and you reduce your stress hormone and you're just feeling good about yourself, your mental health typically improves. But I'm sure through your career as a photographer, but also your exposure as a mental health advocate, I'm sure you've also seen the flip side to that equation, where someone is so focused on their, I don't even want to say physical health, because they're probably physically unhealthy, but their physical aesthetics. And that actually, much like yourself with body dysmorphia, and there's a number of different conditions that exist, but how have you managed your exposure to people that just take it too fucking far and it actually starts to erode their mental health. And from a, you've got a great pedigree in fitness. As you said, you've photographed hundreds of beautiful people. As a mental health advocate, though, there must be a bit of a dichotomy there, that on the one hand, yeah, move your body, feel better. On the other hand, whoa, let's not get fucking carried away because you're going to ruin your brain. How do you have that conversation with people in your community?
It's funny because I can spot it a mile off now with people. So some of these highly impactful influencers, these fitness influencers, I know straight away if they're struggling with a mental health. It's just in the verbiage when they're talking, and you can tell indirectly they're struggling. They're living through a lens where they're trying to highlight these perfect things to gain clients, but they're struggling. When you hear it, so with my community, the way that I went to it, I went to the top people, like the person that you spoke about, that's got a following by being authentic and talking about his struggles. I surrounded myself with a lot more about them so I could understand it and why they talk so heavily on mental fitness. It's not just physical, it's mental. So it's trying to change the narrative within my community by getting these big people exposing everybody else. And until those people, unfortunately, feel comfortable to come forward, we can't push them because it's something we're always on our own journey. We can just educate them and really get them to try and open up. But for me, if I'm photographing somebody, I have conversations and I listen that intently that I can pick it up a mile off. And then I try and change that narrative towards bringing that subject into a photo shoot and just saying, by the way, like, I know we're shooting for this, but I'm actually doing a campaign about mental health. How do you do yours? Or have you struggled? And then some people say, I was on a live TV show and I mentioned it the other day. Think about being on live TV and someone asks you a question and you don't know how to answer it. And I'm like, what? And the question was put to me, going, Glenn, so you've got all these prolific figures on your campaign. And I was like, yeah. And there was like, but they didn't know you. So what is it in you that has this ability for people to feel comfortable and open up to you? And I was sat there and I was like, okay, I'm on camera. What the bloody hell do I say? I'm like, I don't know. I listen to people. And that's the whole thing with mental health. If you listen, you can pick up on those little signs when people are struggling. So yeah, on a photo shoot, it's really just changing that narrative around to get them opening up. And then I can try and redirect them to the campaign indirectly again. So they can see that these big prolific figures talk about it, even though they're big in their own capacity, but they see the bigger ones and then realize themselves, it's actually okay to talk.
That's a perfect segue. And there was a question I wanted to ask you, and I wrote it down about 45 minutes ago, and I'd kick myself if I didn't ask you this. And I'm going to choose my words carefully and be as politically correct as possible. But have you ever shot somebody that aesthetically looked incredible, but because of your process where you listen and you feel and you vibe with that person's depth, and that's what makes you unique as an artist, they may have looked aesthetically perfect, but you knew, or maybe they were vocal, you knew that emotionally or mentally they were very imperfect. And then years later, photograph the same person who was aesthetically imperfect, but because of work and resources and therapy and campaigns such as yourselves, was now mentally or emotionally, and I'm doing air quotes again, perfect. And can you look at those two images and just see the difference between sort of light and dark and happy and sad? Do you have any? I would pay to go to an exhibit where on film, I'm assuming you use film, maybe not, maybe I'm too old and it's digital, but I would love to see on film, because the camera doesn't lie. Here's a literal example of somebody at their lowest low that sociologically we may judge as being a perfect specimen, yet they were suicidal. And then the flip side is an imperfect physical specimen who was happy as shit and had a partner and 3 kids.
Yeah, so one standout I always remember, there's been many, and I could include myself on that. I once posted a photo when I was in Thailand, and I can look now and go, Glenn, what did you put yourself through? Like, you had the the abs, you look perfect aesthetically, and everyone commented on it. However, behind that scenes, my wife had taken that. I was crumbling. That was at my height of body dysmorphia. And I posted that on the campaign a while ago going, what you see is not what you get half the time. And the one standout for me, and I picked it up straight away. So I was shooting this girl, this female influencer. And again, the verbiage, how she was speaking, I could tell there was something. She looked amazing. She'd just come off the back of doing one of these competitions, bikini competitions, started getting really a lot of press coverage and all this kind of stuff. However, the way that she was talking, I could tell she just wasn't happy. And even as she was posing, like, I try and bring out the joy in people so I can get their character and what makes them them. And I was just like, there's something going on here. Again, whether it's intuition or not. And I was digging, and she was sharing, and she never really touched point on it. But I followed her after that to keep just up to date and watching her stuff. And I noticed our social media evolved. And after a week or two, boom, she just went quiet. Mm-hmm. She went quiet for maybe a month or two. And I was like, I reached out to her on the side and was like, hey, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? I've not seen you for a while. She reached back out to me. She told me what she'd gone through. And then the following week, she put a post up and she'd ballooned. Now, you know, in the fitness industry, they do these bikini contests. They suddenly lose all this weight, really good. And then the next minute, because a lot of coaches can get you to that point. However, to come back normally and not mess with your hormones, she ballooned. And she was so ashamed, and she didn't show herself and what had happened, that she just totally went inside and messed with mental health. She'd messed her hormones up, and she didn't know how to respond. And she went through this spiral thing. And she posted that on social media because she'd then gone and got a therapist and was working through it. Her profile doubled overnight. The amount of women that resonated with that story and said, that's what happened with me. So we shot again. And now she's at her healthiest, her happiest. And then we put that picture side by side after she'd just done a photo shoot for, I think it was like Oxygen magazine here in Australia. Whereas you would think she was happy, but behind that smile, I could tell there was something. Picked up on it, followed up with her. Then she posted that, and she had doubled in size. She still looked perfect to me. She still was a good-looking girl. She'd put a little bit of weight on, but she didn't look like she was just coming off stage where she was very, very, like, it looked it just didn't look right that she had put herself through that mentally to the point of that. And that, the pictures side by side, and you'll see her now when she's leading a happier life. She coaches other women. She's actually a really successful coach to women who want to do the competitions, but she will not take anybody on that's not mentally ready for it, from her own experience.
It's, listening to you and Glenn, I want to, both of us want to respect your time. So we're going to start to flirt with wrapping this up. And I'm not very good at that. I tend to go on and on, but, listening to you for the past hour and a bit, there's something that's really obvious to me. And I guess I've always kind of suspected it, but you've done such a phenomenal job at clarifying. And to everyone out there, let's be really fucking clear. Perfection costs way too much. And I'm not talking monetary, although in some cases monetary, but it costs too much of your relationships, of your soul, of your mental health, of your physical health. Perfection costs way too much. So stop it. It's an investment that in many cases, and we've had guests on over the years that are fitness models, and I've had professional bodybuilders constantly striving for perfection, and the costs, every single one of them says if they could take it all back, they would, because there's certain things you spend you can't get back. So thank you so much for your truth and for putting your story and your campaign. I want everyone to know, so how do we find you, the world? How do we find you? How do we, if possible, do you accept donations? How do we become a part of your campaign community?
Yeah, thank you. And just going back to that, with perfect thing. I mean, in the fitness world in itself, I have got so many friends within that industry over 25 years. And if we break it back down to basics, there's a lot of unhappy people. We're training people, but yet sometimes we're the ones that are most, if I can swear, I'll say messed up, because we're trying to lead this life of perfection. And like you said there's a lot of people, when they unravel it, and they've taken things or supplements to look like these pictures on the magazines, and the magazines all aesthetic based, like, what does that cost you? I always say it is really hard to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't understand that industry. When I started trying to do the bodybuilding thing, my wife turned around me and she was like, I didn't marry this boring person. Like, we can't go out for a meal. You're always having to go home at certain times. You've got 6 meals on the go. You've got all this. And I was like, yeah, but I'm just trying to. She was like, no, it's boring. I didn't marry this person and it's going to split up. So you can see we've nearly split up a few times. But I take full responsibility. And I actually got with a friend who was like, he was very good in terms of nutritional advice and everything. He said, you're a father. You need to make sure you got this. So let's replace it with this. If you're on the go, we'll replace it with this. I don't carry containers around. I don't do that. And there's always going to be trainers out there who are going, what's he on about? And that's so what's good about conversations. It's like what I say, someone else might not believe, but at the end of the day, if you are truly honest with yourself, how many times have you been in a relationship which has ended because of trying to be perfect with the fitness world or trying to make something? But in terms of the campaign, sorry, I divulge as well. You can go to imperfectlyperfectcampaign.org. All across the socials is at Imperfectly Perfect Campaign. We don't take donations because I'd rather, as I say, we earn it and we can get back to the people that do need it. All we would say is if you come across it, you want to share anything, share it, tag us, because that's what we're about. To keep spreading it, to let people know about it, simply talk about it.
Amazing. And you mentioned earlier that you are also a fellow podcaster. That sounds super douchey when I say that, so I apologize, Glenn. I didn't mean to put you into that category, but what's the name of your podcast? And if people want to subscribe and download and listen, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so it's called the Imperfectly Perfect Podcast, and you can find it on Spotify or iHeartRadio. We've just come up to probably our 36 episode. Incredible. I'll just finish off by saying last night I was actually on a room with Lewis Howes. So to be on with the king of podcasts, and it was funny when it comes back to mental health, anything, when you start picking on things and you listen. So when you guys are speaking, I'm listening directly to what you're saying, so I really listen. And Lewis Howes said something really important. Everybody was trying to beat their chest because they knew who he was. And this guy who was moderating it, I felt so sorry for him because he was moderating and he was trying to lead the conversation. And everyone was turning the mics off and going, Lewis, and he was talking. And I just sat there and I was like, if people actually listen to what he's saying, he turned around and he said, you know what, when my guests come on, I listen to what they're saying. And then when I send footage out, I send it of them because I'm listening what would make them happy. I'm not putting myself in that position. And for me, I just sat there and I goes, there's going to be a quiet moment where I get to speak. And I went out of the room because there was too much peacocking, and then came back in. And for a split second, there was a moment of silence. And I just jumped in and I was like, can I just say something? Justin, first of all, thank you for moderating this room. You've done an incredible job. I said, Lewis, for you to take your time out and just explain that and talk about listening, I heard you. I just want to say thank you. But now I've got to go and put my 2-year-old daughter to bed. And he was like, thank you. And then literally he started on this app, you clap. So he was like, clap. And he was like, I appreciate that. People forget to listen. People forget to listen. And that is how you grow your business. And that's how you get your audience. And that with your podcast is how you get the best conversations.
Yeah. And that's a great segue. You keep teeing up these amazing segues. Gareth, anything else that you want to add? I was going to walk us out.
Yeah, for sure. I just think the perfect place to end is exactly what we just said. And Carl, you and I had a conversation the other week, and we shared this on another show where, vulnerability, we strive to provide this platform where people can be vulnerable. And we kind of refer to vulnerability as a handshake, because if somebody's coming with their vulnerability, but you're not there to accept it and listen, then you get this clash. So I think that just kind of brings everything together what we just said, right? You have to be able to listen, and you have to be able to be uncomfortable in that with someone else to enable these great conversations. So, I just truly appreciate you coming on, Glenn, being open, being authentic, and, giving your time to spread the message out there. So yeah, that's all I had to say to finish up.
Well, then I'm going to go put on no, not a tank top. What do you call it?
A singlet.
A singlet. I'm going to go put on a singlet and pretend I'm in Australia. Glenn Marsden, thank you so very much. It's always interesting when I'm thanking a guest. As much as I want to say thank you for being a guest on our podcast and for sharing your story, perhaps moreover, I want to thank you for existing, and I want to thank you for being you and creating the campaign to help mental health and become an advocate for some really dark conversations that often live in the shadows, and too many people are scared to have them. So keep up the good work, brother.
Thank you very much, guys. And likewise, feel very privileged to come on and talk to you guys. I know what you do. I know what you're about and what you do for other people, letting them have this safe space to talk about it. So thank you both. And if I can leave anything to your listeners, go into 2021 with your imperfections.
Marvelous. Thank you to everyone around the world for listening to We As Start Talking. Our guest today was Glenn Marsden, and Gareth Knock, thank you so much, brother, for allowing me to co-host with you. Gareth was having some internet issues. That's why he was uncharacteristically a little more quiet than usual. That's it for today, everyone. Please remember, be the best possible versions of yourselves that you can. Love and peace. We're out for now.